and welcome to another edition of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. And in this episode, we're going to take a look at the comments made by a British Olympian who says that trans women should actually have their own events in which they can compete against each other and not compete against women, because that would be unfair, although they really should have competed against men whom they wouldn't beat. So we'll also look at the merits of actually having a separate event. But what I will do is I'll put myself down in the corner to begin with. We'll take a look at this piece and we'll discuss it. Pros and cons. Anyway, here we go. So as you see, this is from Breitbart, and it's British Olympian says trans athletes must compete in a separate category. And there's Nicole Cooke, British cyclist. We did a piece on cycling the other day. This is a different cycling, different cyclist, but it's also a different cycling event. This isn't in velodrome. She's a road cyclist. But we'll go through the piece. British cyclist Nicole Cooke, who won gold medal in the 2008 Beijing Olympics, has announced her opposition to transgender athletes in women's sports, despite being a beloved fan of famed transgender cyclist Pippa York. So she doesn't have a problem with the transgender community, merely that she has a problem with transgenders competing directly against women. In a lengthy op-ed for the Mail on Sunday, Cooke recalled her appreciation for the cyclist Robert Miller, who later transitioned to live as a woman named Pippa York. I understand changing your first name, but second name? Maybe she got married. Who knows? And she said, "I am in awe of the strength of character that was required. I also naturally sympathise with Pippa for having spent much of her life in the wrong body. I cannot imagine how difficult that private struggle must have been," wrote Cooke. Now, there is no such thing as being in the wrong body. It's simply that you have a mental condition. Because you're in the right body. You're in your body. The only way you can be in the wrong body is if you're actually in somebody else's body. And short of a brain transplant, that's not going to happen. We can't exactly transfer consciousness. Long way away from that. So you're not in the wrong body. That's the wrong word. The wrong body. Because it's your body. What you have is a mental condition that gives you dysphoria, probably a lot of self-loathing. But that's an issue for a psychiatrist. But despite this admiration, Cooke ultimately believed that transgender athletes have their own category, fearing that inclusion in women's sports would ultimately take away from the fairness that should be the heart of every competition. And that's right. I mean, even without take the transgender argument out, you wouldn't put a flyweight boxer in a ring with a welterweight, because the welterweight would batter the crap out of him, because it wouldn't be fair. So why should you put a man in a ring with a woman? And by ring, I mean a velodrome, a track, a field of sport, a swimming pool. Regardless of what the location is, why should a man take on a woman with all the advantages that a man has got? It's like I say, it's like putting a welterweight in with a flyweight. It's unfair. But I quote her, she said, "I entered full-time cycling knowing that it was a man's world. I competed not for fame or money, but because I loved the sport with a passion. I wanted to take part and prove my worth to myself and those close to me. And that is exactly what the debate should distill down to. Why do it? Sport is about competition amongst equals. Boxing has weight limits because there would be no contest putting a 9-stone man up against the largest man on the planet. Women's sport is segregated because, in many disciplines, the larger average form of the male body confers an advantage. And not just the size of the body. There's so much more. Any boy that goes through male puberty comes out at the back end of it, and even if they subsequently take hormones to reduce testosterone, things like that, they still have a massive physical advantage. Cooke ultimately likened the inclusion of biological males to a performance-enhancing drug due to their testosterone exposure throughout their development. She rejected the idea that hormone blockers could somehow reverse this advantage and scolded bureaucratic organisations for failing to fully acknowledge this reality. This is right. Virtually every sport, its ruling is, oh, the testosterone is below, insert whatever the level is for that sport. But testosterone is only a tiny part of the advantage. Until they can administer, how can we put it? With racehorses, you have handicapping. And in a handicap, I don't mean you cut legs off. What I mean is they have a handicapping system where they say, well, this horse is naturally faster than this one's won more than this. And so they put weights into the horse, into the saddle. And so that the better horses get more weight, and therefore it confers a form of equality. Now, the only way you can do the handicapping if you're putting a man into a sport with a woman would be to not just reduce the testosterone, but would be to put in, like, give him osteoporosis to make the bones the same strength, and then maybe some surgery to reduce muscle mass. You see that this is where it's going, because men's bone density, muscle mass, and in fact, even body chemistry is different. Men's blood can absorb oxygen far quicker than women's blood. Men generally have larger lungs. So a man and a woman who are the same size in all respects, same height, same weight, same build, the man would still have larger lungs and probably a bigger heart in most cases, and therefore the oxygen uptake would be vastly better, and that confers an advantage. Also, men can push through the lactic phase faster. There are so many biochemistry advantages to being male in terms of athletic prowess, and then things like twitch response in muscles. You know, the reaction time. You ever see the twitch response between men and women is measurable in, we're not talking microseconds here, we're talking tenths of seconds, but a tenth of a second on the starting block wins a race. Linford Christie, very famously, when he won the 100 metres, and he said he went on the B of bang, because his reactions were, as soon as he heard the of the starting gun, it was up and out. That twitch response is far, far faster in a man. So there's not just testosterone, Anyway, moving on. She says, a person who has spent years consuming large quantities of testosterone or another PED will have a significant athletic advantage over one who has not, she argued. No one should expect sports administrators to offer any moral guidance. The authorities are trying and failing to level the playing field through the use of one arbitrary physical metric, namely testosterone levels, she added. But human bodies are different and respond to medication differently. Some trans women athletes will suffer severe loss of condition achieving the required testosterone limit. Others will not. Cooke ultimately concluded that the only way forward was for transgender athletes to have their own category, which she agreed will attract little attention and dramatically shrink the pool of competitors. Well, yeah, because instead of having, let's say 5,000 world-class swimmers competing in heats for 100 spaces to get to national playoffs, where they're going to pick 8 to represent a country at the Olympics, you're going to have, those 4. We'll do those 4. Those 4 blokes will turn up to do it. Because there's only going to be 4 or 5 of them eligible. So there'll be no sponsorship. But that's up to them. But it's certainly fair because they're not racing women. But there's more to be said on this. She went on to say, the field in the trans group will be smaller, as mentioned. If the motive to compete is genuine, however, competing fairly without a circus of discord is surely preferable. It would allow trans athletes to enjoy sport without distraction. But they're not in it for sport. They're in it for fame, glory and money. However, and she says this, however, if a trans athlete's true motive is a desire for fame and wealth, to access a subsequent career in I'm a celebrity or similar, then a dark path lies ahead. For them, it is not the competing that matters, only victory. Where, how, and against whom is forgotten. Cooke's recommendation for a separate category follows that of tennis icon Martina Navratilova, who said there should be an open category for everyone and then for biological females. So trans women can compete, but they'll compete against men, and trans men have a choice. Actually, here's the thing. If you had an open category, you would have all the trans women, all these not very good men in the open category, and they would lose to all the men. And so they go, oh, that's not fair. Can we have an open category that men can't play so that we can win something? So the women would retain the women's sport, but they'd be eligible to play in the open sport. Then there's the open sport where the trans would go. But if it's open, then men could join. Then the trans lobby would be saying, oh, but that's not fair. Manly men will beat us. And then they'll understand exactly how women feel when beta males try to take on women at sport. Irony is they might learn something. So how about not having an open category, but having a trans category? Now, it's fair. The women retain their women's sports. They don't get the pressure on from men trying to beat them. The men compete on a level playing field with other men and don't have to worry that they're going to slaughter the hell out of these beta males who aren't good enough. And the beta males themselves have a little competition all for themselves that nobody really cares about. Because there'll be no sponsorships for it. Because oh look, here's a man who, let's say for example, it was the 100 metres. Now, sure, you'll watch the women's 100 metres. Why not? And, whoever the 100 metres, I can't remember who the 100 metres, it was not Flojo, it used to be Flojo, she died, didn't she? But whoever the current black American or black Jamaican woman, because it's going to be a black American or a black Jamaican who holds the record, I can't remember who it is. I should look it up really for completeness. Whoever it is, she holds the record for women's 100 metres, which I think is something like 10.5 seconds. Or you've got the men's 100 metres. Usain Bolt, I think, holds the record. And again, top of my head, it's something like 9.89 seconds or something like that. Call it 9.9 seconds. So between sort of 9.9 seconds and 10.5 seconds, it's 0.6 seconds. And if you divide the 0.6 seconds into the 100 metres, that's about a 6 metre difference. So Usain Bolt would, assuming the man and the woman leave at the same time, both world record holders, they're both they're racing their fastest race, bang, they go. The man finishes 6 metres ahead of the woman. The world's best trans athlete, theoretically, would finish 3 metres behind the world's best man and 3 metres ahead of the world's best woman. Thereabouts. Probably nearer the man than the woman. So it's not fair to the women for him to race against women. And he's not competitive against the men. So who's going to pay to see it? Because what you'll have is, hey, here's some men running, but they're not the world's fastest men. Nobody's interested. Here's the men's 100 metres final. It's the world's fastest men. Everybody watches that. It's a blue ribboned event. It's the 3 big ones are the 100 metres, the 400 metres, and the 1500 metres. And the 100 metres is the big one. And nobody's going to sit there and watch the 100 metres for men who aren't very fast. And if you had men who aren't very fast getting medals, it debases the medal ceremony. Oh, have a medal, even though you're not the world's fastest man. You're a man, but you're not the world's fastest man. Have a medal for being you're the fastest of the men who aren't very fast. Have a medal. It debases the whole medal ceremony. So the argument is, yes, you should have a separate event, but it shouldn't eclipse the main event, and it isn't going to be a very, very important one. But then you have to ask, why are they competing? Is it for the fun of the game? Is it because they want to be the best at what they do? Or is it the fame and the money? And I think we all know it's the fame and the money. Anyway, I shall come up and we shall round this video off. So yes, the absolute fairness, of course, is that they have their own events. That way they're not defeating women unfairly, and they're not being slaughtered by proper men. And that's the fairness. If they just want to compete for the sake of sport, and I'm all for that, let them have their competition. But it cannot be on the same par as the premier sporting events. Simply because, whilst it'll be, should we say, better results than the women's events, at least when the women's event's doing it, you know you're seeing the best women in the world. But when you're seeing the trans men, you're seeing not very good men. They're not the best in the world. They're not the best men in the world doing their sport. They're the best men in the world who are rubbish at their sport. Because if they were actually any good at their sport, as men, they'd compete with the men. But they don't. And so it's the question here is, why do you want to play the sport? And if it is just for the hell of the sport, the love of the sport, the wanting to beat your own record, you know, your all-time best, you know, that's fine. I play golf. I'm not very good at it. I don't care. I don't play to beat other people. I like picking up a bag of clubs and wandering around and just hitting the ball on my own sometimes, because I like doing it. I used to go up on a little par 3 course straight after work of a night, midweek in the summer. It was lovely. Play on my own, whack a few balls. Sometimes didn't even lose any. I wasn't in it for the fame and the money. And if that's why you're playing the sport, then that's fine. But if you're playing it because you want to beat people, then you've got to beat people on a fair basis. But as I say, if you're going to start winning medals, it does kind of debase and dilute the medal system if you're getting medals for being not the best. So I think Nicole Cooke summed that up perfectly well. She's saying that she's fine with the trans community, just doesn't want them competing against her, and that for their benefit and for the benefit of women, best they have their own category. And I argue, yes, that's the fairest way, but it is debasing of the medal system. So it's careful. You have to be very careful, I think. Anyway, we'll round that off there. If you like what you hear and see on the channel, please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Ring the bell for notifications of future output. Leave a like, leave a comment, and until next time, stay safe, stay well, and goodbye.